right, hello everyone. Welcome into another episode of Matt Sports Talk. Thank you so much for tuning in with me this afternoon. And in this video, we are going to be recapping the women's volleyball semifinal round for just the Crossroads League teams only. And last night's games were really exciting, and we are going to dive in to those. And the first matchup takes us to Mount Vernon, Ohio, which is actually this is where where I currently record these videos, where I live here in Central Ohio. So right here in the Vern, as they say, we had MVNU as a 2 seed hosting 6 seed Marion. Now, if you're with me in the quarterfinal round, when I recapped that back on Monday earlier this week, I mentioned that Marion as a 6 seed upset Huntington. That was a 3 seed. And Marion had that upset over the Foresters 3-1, and MVNU as a 2 seed was able to sweep Marion. Now, for contrast, this was the first time, I believe, in at least 2 years, maybe 3, I'm not totally sure right off the top of my head, but at least 2 years since the Lady Cougars of Mount Vernon Nazarene has swept the Lady Knights of Marion. And it was a 3-0 sweep last night for the Lady Cougars out of Mount Vernon, Ohio. And the set score is 25-17 Mount Vernon in the first. And now in the second set, in fact, I watched this game last night, and it was just absolutely amazing. And in the second set, Mount Vernon was actually ahead by a score of 18-13, and the Lady Knights went on. I believe it was a 10-2 run in the second set, and Mount Vernon actually trailed 23-20 and was able to rally back and go up. I believe it was 24-23, and then after that, it was just a back-and-forth battle for set point between Mount Vernon and Marion. Mount Vernon would get the set point, Marion would respond and get the point, and then Mount Vernon would get the set point again, Marion would respond, and then Marion actually was ahead 28-26 in terms of, or 28-27 in terms of set points in the second set, and Mount Vernon was able to go on a 3-0 run to end the second set and take it by a final score of 30-28. And then after that, in the third set, it was all Mount Vernon. Marion just ran out of steam in the third set, and Mount Vernon cruised to a 25-13 win in the third set. Now, in the first set, Marion hit negative .054 with 9 errors. Mount Vernon hit .211 with only 6 errors. And in the second set, Marion hit .295 with 5 errors. Mount Vernon hit .286 with 6 errors, so it was pretty much identical in the second set. And then in the third and final deciding set, it was all Mount Vernon. Marion was limited to just El Zippo hitting percentage with 6 errors. Mount Vernon hit a blistering .429 in the third set with only 3 errors, so that pretty much tells you all you need to know there. Marion as a team hit just .106 compared to .296 as a team for Mount Vernon. So again, you obviously know, who was the better team in terms of those numbers. And looking at stats for Marion, you had Emerson Evans with 7 digs on the match, Sammy Littell with 4 digs. You also had Nicole Wilkinson with 2 kills and 1 dig. Wilkinson was limited to just .091 on the negative side in terms of hitting percentage by Mount Vernon's defense. So obviously that's pretty, obviously really good if you're head coach Kendra Mosier and the Lady Cougars. And then you had Lexa Zimmerman with 11 digs on the match, Evie Dart with 4 kills, Emma Lyons, the libero, with 15 digs. So really amazing numbers there. Of course, Lyons was among the top players in the Crossroads League this year in terms of digs. So very well deserving to see her do that well. And what could have been their final game of the season. It just depends on the National Tournament Selection Show, which is going to be coming up Monday night at 5 o'clock Eastern Time. And I will, of course, be recording a video earlier that afternoon recapping the championship game. That will be coming up Saturday afternoon, and then after I record that video on Monday, I'll record a separate video giving you a final updated view on the final RPI rankings, the final ARC rankings, and also the final Massey ratings in terms of teams that are on the bubble, which teams on the bubble have the best chance of getting in, which teams do not. I'm going to do all that on Monday, so make sure that you stay tuned for that. You also had last night for the Knights, Avery Toole with only 3 kills on the match, and she was limited to just negative .59 hitting percentage. So again, Mount Vernon's defense really stepping up in a big way last night. Maya Cunningham with 2 kills and 2 digs. You also had Chloe Cook with 11 kills, so that was one bright spot for the Lady Knights. 11 kills for Cook. You also had Callaway Marsh getting some playing time, and Corey Dryden was limited to just 9 kills and 6 digs on .061 hitting percentage. So really, really amazing that. In fact, the last time these two teams met in Ariel Arena last month, Corey Dryden, I believe, had 20 kills, I want to say, in that game, 17, 18, 20, somewhere between 17 and 20 in that last matchup in Mount Vernon last month in the regular season. So obviously for Mount Vernon, this was kind of avenging their tough loss to Marion. Of course, last month when they hosted Marion, Morgan Schlabach got hurt during that game when Mount Vernon was up 2-1, and that probably was the reason why Marion was able to come back and win in 5 sets in that matchup. But this time, Mount Vernon had a fully healthy roster and was able to avenge that tough loss last month and get a very big 3-0 sweep last night against an extremely talented Lady Knights team. And obviously for them, we don't know where the national tournament is going to end up for them, if they're even going to make it or not. But still, first year for them at 18-11, 9-9 in the conference. I mean, you'll take those numbers all day under first-year head coach Ryan Bowerman, especially with him being not just a first-year head coach, but they were, kind of a young team this year, graduated quite a few key players last year and the year before that. So obviously for them to still come out and be able to compete this year and be that competitive despite having some bad losses, that's still quite an accomplishment for them. They also had some big wins as well this year. And then looking at Mount Vernon's stats from last night, you had Kate Ruffle with 2 digs on the match, Morgan Schlabach with 4 kills and 8 digs. You also had Ashley Merrick with 4 digs, Reagan Nuss 3 kills, 15 digs for her. Faith Maloney 10 kills with 3 digs. You also had Jalen Tang coming up huge in the backcourt with 16 digs. Grace Pratt also had a dig. Eliana Morgan with 5 kills on the match, and boy, these last two on the bottom just lit it up last night for Lady Cougar offense. You had Libby Evanshine, 15 kills on the match, 2 digs. And how about freshman outside hitter from Canal Winchester, John Bloom Carroll High School, Evelyn Brown, 12 kills on the match for her. She also had 3 blocks and had an 800 hitting percentage last night. So just absolutely phenomenal stats to see out of the young freshman on this Lady Cougar offense, that is for sure. And then looking at other players that got playing time real quick for Marion, you also had Ava Tyndall with some playing time. And you had, I covered everybody else that got playing time, and I covered everybody on Mount Vernon's team that got playing time as well. So that was your matchup there. And then the last matchup in the semis takes us to Lucky Arena. Indiana Wesleyan, the 1 seed, hosted 5-seeded Spring Arbor after Spring Arbor upset the Lady Trojans of Taylor in the opening round this past Saturday. And Indiana Wesleyan, it was a pretty close game, at least in the first set. Now, for contrast, of course, Indiana Wesleyan ranks first in the Crossroads League in terms of hitting, I believe it was hitting percentage. I don't remember, but I do remember that for Spring Arbor, they rank first in the Crossroads League in terms of blocks per game. So this was a really, really good matchup, and it was the Wildcats with a 3-0 sweep here. The Wildcats go to 26-4 on the year. The Cougars of Spring Arbor fall to 23-10, and the Cougars are another team on the bubble in terms of a national tournament. The Wildcats taking the first set 25-23 and then 25-16. Indiana Wesleyan in a second and third set respectively. And in the first set, Spring Arbor hit 182 with 5 errors on the match, and Indiana Wesleyan hit 213 with 8 errors, so it was kind of pretty even there. The second set, Spring Arbor was limited to just El Zippo in terms of hitting percentage with 7 errors. Indiana Wesleyan hit 209 with 5 errors. And then the third and final deciding set, the Wildcats 7 errors on a 161 hitting percentage, and the Cougars of Spring Arbor 8 errors with negative .030 hitting percentage. So that pretty much tells you all you need to know there. The Cougars of Spring Arbor as a team hit .055 compared to 198 for the Wildcats. So that pretty much tells you all you need to know. Looking at stats for Spring Arbor, you had Eliza Munro with 6 digs, Isabel Kirkendall with 6 kills and 2 digs, Gabby Bryja with 4 digs. You also had Palmer Fortress with 12 digs, so really good numbers there. Kelsey Lilly, 8 kills on the match with 2 digs. Cammie Wedge had 7 digs, but she hit negative 1,000 for the game, so obviously you don't like to see those numbers, at least in terms of the hitting percentage. And then you had Keely Heinzman with 2 kills and 3 digs. You had Julia Mitchell with 2 kills and 1 dig. And Kendall Ballenbacher, Spring Arbor's best player, was limited to just 6 kills, 6 digs on a negative .071 hitting percentage. Now, for Ballenbacher, she actually is the all-time career kills leader at Spring Arbor. She achieved that milestone in the quarterfinal round upset win at Taylor last Saturday, so huge congratulations to her for that. And then Natasha Bickle with 3 kills and 4 digs for Spring Arbor. And then looking at stats for the Wildcats, you had Kamea Murray with 5 digs on the match. Abigail Porter had 15 digs, so really, really good numbers there out of the senior. You had Katie Nodder with 16 digs, so man, between Nodder and Porter, boy, what amazing numbers there. And then you had Shay Williams with 12 kills and 3 digs. And you had Marin Sanchez with 4 kills and 3 digs. Jessica Ickes with 2 kills and 1 dig. Autumn Kohlauer with 1 dig. Yessie Louise with 13 digs. So really, really good numbers there. And then Ava Geroldsma with 10 kills and 12 digs. Geroldsma hit just .053 on the match. So obviously that's kind of uncharacteristic to see out of her. But the huge player for the Wildcats last night was senior Marissa Mullins from Circleville, Ohio, 6'1", and she made her presence known, that is for sure, last night. 16 kills for Mullins. She did not have any digs, but she had 16 kills on a hitting percentage of .600. So really, really amazing numbers out of the senior, that's for sure. And that was your matchup there. And then giving you a preview of the championship matchup, it will be between 1 seed Indiana Wesleyan and 2 seed Mount Vernon Nazarene. That game will take place Saturday afternoon at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. The Wildcats 26-4. They've already punched their ticket into the national tournament with winning the regular season. The Cougars of Mount Vernon Nazarene 25-7. So this is a pretty tight matchup here. And the Cougars of Mount Vernon have officially punched their ticket into the national tournament with being the Crossroads League, at least at minimum, the Crossroads League tournament runner-up in terms of that. And if the Wildcats win that game on Saturday, then the Cougars would receive the second automatic bid with being the Crossroads League tournament runners-up. If the Cougars upset the Wildcats, then the Cougars would still get an automatic bid for being the Crossroads League tournament champions. So either way you slice it, Mount Vernon Nazarene has officially punched their ticket into the national tournament for the 3rd straight year, I might add. And meanwhile, for the Wildcats, they are looking to keep the winning streak alive at home versus MVNU. The last time they lost to MVNU at home was way back in 2003, and that obviously was way before the Crossroads League was even a thing. So looking real quickly, I want to pull out. I want to see if I can pull up I'm going to see if I can pull up the Massey ratings here. Okay, so I'm going to pull up the current Massey rating lastly, and of course this is another indication of which teams could be on the bubble for the national tournament, which teams might not. But again, this also depends on the final ARC and RPI rankings, which are going to be coming out, I believe, either Saturday or probably Sunday, if I had to guess. And I'll be, of course, talking about all of this in my second video on Monday after I record a prior video to that one, recapping the Crossroads League Championship round. So looking at the updated Massey rating, Indiana Wesleyan is in that number 7 spot in the Massey. Their rating is 6.34, but again, they don't matter because they've already punched their ticket to the national tournament. Now, looking at them versus MVNU, and you have the estimated wins. You have Indiana Wesleyan has a 95% chance of beating Mount Vernon Nazarene in that Crossroads League Tournament Championship game on Saturday. Meanwhile, for Mount Vernon, they have a 95% chance that they will lose that game. So obviously, this is kind of really cool to look at. And meanwhile, for the Wildcats, their strength of schedule is 26th, and compare that to Mount Vernon. Their strength of schedule is 32nd. Mount Vernon is 12th in the Massey, and of course, this is obvious. This is also where Mount Vernon is currently ranked nationally. When those updated polls came out yesterday, Mount Vernon still ranked 12th. The Wildcats still ranked 8th. And then you have receiving votes Huntington, Taylor, Spring Arbor, and Marion. And then looking at Mount Vernon, they're 12th in the Massey, 12th in the country. Their Massey rating is 5.95. So now, of course, obviously we know Mount Vernon's guaranteed to be in the national tournament. So again, them and Iowa really do not matter. And then looking at teams on the bubble for nationals, you have in terms of the Massey rating, Marion now is actually in terms of the Massey rating, Marion is actually now jumped ahead of everybody else, and Marion now in prime position to potentially get an at-large bid in the national tournament. They are 31st in the Massey. They're up 2 positions. 5.54 is their Massey rating. Taylor right behind them. Taylor's fallen 3 spots in the Massey. Taylor is 32nd in the Massey. Their Massey rating 5.53. So them and Marion pretty identical in terms of that. And then Huntington has fallen 10 spots in the Massey. Huntington down to 35th now. Their Massey rating 5.50. And then for Spring Arbor, they're up 4 positions after their semifinal appearance. Spring Arbor is 39th in the Massey, 5.43 is their Massey rating. So if you base that off the Massey rating, you would have Spring Arbor would actually be in first at 5.53, and then you would have Marion, Taylor 5.53, 5.54, and then Huntington 5.50. So based on the Massey rating, it looks like, and again, it's all going to depend on the updated RPI and the ARC when those come out Sunday. It looks like right now, the 2 teams looking most likely to be in the national tournament via an at-large bid would be Marion and Taylor. Marion 18-11, Taylor 20-11. And then you have Huntington 24-8, Spring Arbor 23-10. So that would absolutely be wild if Huntington did not make the national tournament despite being 24-8. But obviously for them, they really didn't play anybody in the regular season, at least in terms of teams that were ranked. Now they do have 2 upset wins against Marion in the regular season. They also have an upset win against then number 20 Taylor, but I'm just not sure if that's going to be quite enough for them. Now, the one bright spot, though, for Huntington is they do have, at least in the last RPI ranking, they actually do have a really, really good RPI ranking, or not RPI, but they have a really high ARC ranking. So again, that's really going to be interesting once I come back and record my next videos, which will be coming up on Monday, sharing all of that between the Massey, RPI, and ARC rankings. It should be a lot of fun. So if you did enjoy this video, or if it was super helpful to you, please either like, comment, or subscribe to my channel. Any one of those options helps me out greatly. My goal is to hit 500 subscribers by February 21st, 2026. I'm now up to well over 100 subscribers. So for those of you that have done that, I thank you so much. I really, really appreciate that. And please keep subscribing here to my channel so you are first notified whenever I upload new episodes. And I truly appreciate any feedback that you provide me. And let's get up to 500 subscribers by February 21st, 2026, when the end of the regular season is, which at that time will be the end of the regular season for Crossroads League men's and women's basketball. So again, thanks so much for tuning into this video. Have a great rest of your day, a fantastic weekend, and I will see you back on Monday with more of Matt's Sports Talk, and we will have a lot to talk about that day, that is for sure. So have a great rest of your week and weekend, and God bless.